Hello there. For the last few months, Firefox has had a feature called AI Chatbot. You may have seen it. If you're like me, you might have noticed that it didn't appear to have any ability to use this chatbot locally, so immediately ignored it and never looked at it again. However, what if I were to tell you that there is a way to have the chatbot utilize a local model so that your chats can remain secure and not have them necessarily sent to OpenAI or Anthropic or what have you. So first, let's dive in and have a look at this. I'm on an Arch Linux system here. This is the version of Firefox that I'm using, 148.0.2. And I've just created an entirely new profile to show this feature off. So here we go to settings, AI controls, and a lot of people probably just have AI blocked entirely, but we will have to have that off. You don't need to have any of the other things turned on if you don't want them. And then we've got chatbot in sidebar available, and then you have some options, but these are all ones that require you to send your data someplace else. So let's have a look at that in action. I'll just open up a new tab, and we've got this button on the side here, and then this one, and then this sparkly thing. That's what the chatbot is. So if we click on that, here we've got some options about basically the same list that we saw before in the settings page. And we don't really want to have, we want to use something local. So let's get to making that happen. What we're going to need to do first off is head into the About config. Unfortunately, the option is hidden by default. And then we're going to go to browser.ml, machine learning, and we've got the chatbot enabled. There's an option here, hide localhost. We're going to set that to false just by double clicking on that feature. If we scroll down to chat provider, we're going to want to type in, for our example here, http://localhost. Oops, if I can type. http://localhost:8080. And that's all we'll need to change for now. We may want to change this value later, but I'll get back to that. All right, so now we need to have a local model installed. A lot of people may be familiar with OLLAMA or OLLAMA, which we can install like so. I'll just make this a little bit bigger so you can see. I'm using an Arch Linux system, so LLAMA, here we go. So this is the version I've installed. As you can see that there's different versions. There's CUDA, which is probably better for if you've got a dedicated NVIDIA GPU. ROCM's probably better for AMDs, and then you've got the Vulkan driver, which is for anything else. Now I'm on a very old system here. Actually, it's a laptop. If I LS CPU, we're looking at a 7th gen, dual core, 4 threads, and I've got 16 gig of RAM. So I've experimented with this. I do have Vulkan installed, Vulkan drivers, and I've tried that, and I've also tried the non-Vulkan version, and I think in my particular case the non-Vulkan version seems to be a little bit better, so that's what I've gone with. Your mileage may vary, depends very much on what sort of computer you have, but you can dig into the OLLAMA website, just ollama.com, and there's a lot of documentation there in the docs page. So yeah, not really much point in me hashing over all of that because that's going to be machine specific. But if you really, if you're not sure, you can just go with the default. As I say, I'm using a pretty old machine here, and it's working fine for me. This page summary feature, which is what you'll probably be using a chatbot for mostly, doesn't really require a lot of compute, honestly. So once we've got that hide localhost, once we've modified that about config setting, we can actually see when we close and reopen the sidebar, it's trying to connect to localhost now, but it can't because we need that. Well, you might think, well, we actually have Ollama running, right? I've installed it. Surely I have it running. And if I have a look at that, using systemd in my case, and we can see it is actually active and running. So the problem is, well, actually, if I look at the port that's listening on, oops, that's that. Oops, grep. Just if I type that right. So by default, it's going to be listening on port 11434, and I can go to 127.0.0.1. Oops, 11434 in my browser, and it'll say Ollama is running. It's not actually. It's basically just providing an API endpoint. It's not really that useful. It's not something that Firefox can utilize. But what we need is something called Open Web UI. So I'll just go to that page here. This is the project page that we'll want to install. So this is basically what Firefox is going to be showing in this tab here in the chat sidebar, and that is going to interface with Ollama. So unfortunately, that's not in the Arch repositories. If I backman search Open Web UI, it just doesn't exist. It might be in R. Let's see. DuckDuckGo. There you are. So it looks like there are options available. So that's one way to go about doing it. I've actually went with the official method for this, or semi-official method. If we scroll down on the official project page here, installation with default configuration, it's got some Docker commands. It'll basically just run Docker. And if we scroll down, the problem is with this, I believe it's kind of assuming that it can talk to Ollama on the localhost port that it's running on. And because I'm running it outside of a Docker container and I don't have it exposed to that Docker container, these commands are not going to work out of the box. But if we scroll down the page here, there's information about what to do if you get a connection error for this type of situation where it can't connect to the server on that port 11434. You can use this Docker command instead. So we're just going to paste that into a console and make that a bit bigger so we can actually see what I'm doing. And that's literally just copying and paste. And that's it. Now you see it's actually part of that argument is restart always. So this is going to be always running in the background. Even if you reboot your computer, it's going to start up as a system service, assuming you have Docker configured correctly. So now if we, well, I can just do Docker PS and you'll see that's running. And also, you'll remember that we had in Firefox, we configured it to in the about config settings to listen on localhost port 8080. So we want to make sure that we're listening for that here. I'll just do run netstat just to see if anything's listening there. Netstat. Maybe it hasn't started up yet. If I just go to Docker logs, open web UI. Okay. -F. All right. Now it's it should be running now. Uh, 80. Okay, here we go. It is running now. So it must have just been a little too quick. It takes a little time for this to start up, especially the first time, because I believe it has to generate the secret key. Anyway, that's up and running. We can see it listening on port 8080. One thing I don't like about this actually is, see how it's listening on all 0.0.0.0. I'd rather it just listen on 127.0.0.1 instead of trying to listen on all network interfaces, even though I don't think it will actually, the software is configured to accept connections on other interfaces. I'd rather it just not have those exposed in the first place. So I'm actually going to redo this Docker command. So again, Docker, if we do stop, open web UI, stopping. Okay, that's stopped. We can see it's not following the logs anymore because I'd previously ran Docker logs open web UI -F to follow the logs. So here I will remove that container. Actually, do I need to? And then I'll rerun that command, except actually I ran it in here, I think. This one, except if we do -E host equals 127.0.0.1. So you can actually set environment variables in Docker using -E, and -host host is one of the environment variables that that open web UI will actually listen for, so it knows what to listen on. Now, if we follow that log, follow the logs again, make sure it's actually started up this time. It's getting there. Anyway, I'll grep for port 80. It's taking time. Come on, you can do it. Normally this, as I say, it takes longer to start up the first time, and it's listening. Normally it'll just be running in the background when you turn the computer on, so it doesn't really matter how long it takes necessarily. And you'll see that we've fixed the problem here. Now it's listening on 127.0.0.1 instead of 8080, which is much more preferable that way, even if it does happen to listen on other interfaces that I wasn't expecting, or if I didn't have firewall rules configured properly and then I go on a public network or something, I don't need to worry so much about security implications associated with it listening on all interfaces. So that's it. That should be now readily available in this sidebar. If I go 8080, the same thing. This is the same thing that we've told Firefox to listen on. I'll just close this for now. And it's going to ask you, it's going to ask me to sign in, or in your case, it probably is going to ask you to create an account. It's because I've already used this before, that I already have an account. So I'm just going to sign this in. Okay, now I've just signed in. One of the things I should note is that there's some models that we're going to have to use that are quite lightweight for this particular laptop. So if we have a look at the models that I've used in particular, LLMA 3.2, colon 1b, and then PHI 3.5, colon latest. So if you're curious about how to install those, you could just do something like O llama pull llama 3.2 colon 1b, something like that. And because I already have it, it's instant. But that's the gist, and then you do the same for PHI 3.5 latest or whatever if you wanted. So you can do help, and it'll show you a list of all the commands. List shows you the models that you're running. If you've all the usual Olama commands, hopefully you're familiar with those. But if not, that documentation on the website I showed you before is really useful. So now that we have this, I've just defaulted to LLAMA 3.2 for now, and I'll close these tabs. Actually, sorry, I got a bit of ahead of myself there. There is some optimizations that we will want to do on low-end hardware such as this, because otherwise what I've found is that it can actually be a lot slower because it's trying to do more things than what we actually need it to. So if we, as I say, just showed you, getting ahead of myself again, if we click on the icon for your profile, click on settings, and then hop over to the interface section, scroll down here until you see title auto generation, follow-up auto generation, chat tags auto generation, all of these auto generation stuff. Just turn all of that stuff off, because that actually, in my case, I found that was using a lot of resources. Turning all of that off made things much more practical on this lower end hardware. If you've got a really decent computer, you might not need to worry about all that stuff. But then again, if you're not using them, why waste the resources? So with that all out of the way, let's dive in and see what we've got. Okay, so once again, we have to sign in. Okay, now I'm signed in, and you'll see we've got this summarize page option down the bottom as well. Now let's just go to I don't know, here's an article. That's in the headlines today. So what we'll want to do is click on summarize page. All right, so because of the amount of ads on that page and how slow my computer was, what I ended up doing was closing OBS and closing the tab, and because the AI chat is in its own separate section, it kept on processing in the background even though I didn't have the tab open anymore. So as you can see, it finally generated a summary, and there we go. That was all generated locally. Before wrapping up, one of the things I did want to jump back to was that max length 7000 that we saw in about config. So if I'll just bring that up again for reference. So browser.ml.chat. Max length. That's 7000. That's a reference to how many characters you'll find in an article. So if we jump back to what we saw in this output, you can see it's basically I'm on page, and then it's extracted all the text from the article, and then please summarize this section. So it's basically got some smarts in there to automatically detect what the what the actual main text of the article is, extracted that, and then sent that to an LLM. But if this value is too low for the article, if it's a really long page, maybe, or many characters long, it'll actually truncate the article And I believe there'll be some text there to indicate that that article has been truncated. So you might need to bump that up. But of course, if you bump this up, that means you're increasing the context that you're sending to the LLM, which requires more memory resources. So if you have a low spec machine or a low amount of video RAM or what have you, you might run into some limitations. You might start potentially swapping or something and just making it take forever. So there's only a certain limit, most likely, that will be, and it will depend on the model that you're using and various factors. But basically find a model that seems right for you. You can, if you never have any problems running models because you just have a really powerful computer and you're running really light models, then you could just bump that up to anything you want, really. And yeah, so let's have a look at that article again, just to make sure that this has actually captured everything. I believe it has. As I said, I think there's a message that it normally shows at the bottom if it's wrong, if it was truncated. So it starts off the article saying, Trump says many countries will send warships. And if we search for that text, so here it just looks like it's the it's interesting how it's kind of truncated some of this, but anyway, let's look for this on the page. Oops. The ads are really making this computer go slow. Okay, so selection is actually accurate in terms of identifying the start of the article, and if we scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, and just grab the end of the selection there, search for that, and it has captured the entire article. So therefore, hopefully the summary is actually somewhat accurate. These summaries, because they're LLMs, they're never going to be, well, they're not perfect. I have encountered some sentences where the model was a little confused about the context of a certain quote, and it attributed a quote to a wrong person and things like that, which a human wouldn't really make that mistake, but I could see how it got confused. So yeah, you can't, it's not going to be 100% trustworthy, but you'll get the gist of it. And if something looks raises an eyebrow, you can go back and check, or it really depends on what sort of thing you're trying to summarize. Of course, you should just never really fully trust these summarized features. The things that it might think are important points to summarize might actually not be the points that you would pick out if you were to read it yourself. But anyway, you can weigh up the pros and cons yourself. So yeah, this computer, obviously not the greatest, but if I can do it on this computer, then I'm sure most people can run a local LLM, no problem. It's worth noting that there are other ways to run an LLM. Mozilla is working on something that's a cross-platform single binary solution that you can just execute, and it will basically load a local LLM model. It's basically the equivalent of running OLAMA and Open Web UI all in one, but then you're responsible for managing managing it as a service, so making sure it starts automatically when you turn your computer on and all of that. And also it's not as flexible in terms of being able to change the model quickly and things like that. So I personally don't prefer to go that way, but that is an option perhaps worth looking into if you're interested in this. So hopefully you learned something. Hopefully it was interesting. I will see you in the next video. Bye.